Welcome to the special edition over Zoom. I'm Henry Annen, the assistant sports editor at the Iowa State Daily, and that's Aleigha Bailey, sports editor at the Iowa State Daily. And today on this episode, we're going to be talking about men's and women's March Madness. Have sports reporter Marshall Woods to go over his men's March Madness bracket and also bring us threads of the week. All of that on this week's episode of the Ames Angle.
First on the agenda is the women's bracket. Henry, what are your thoughts on Iowa State's drawing in the tournament?
I like Iowa State as an 8 seed. I think that fits them very well, and they didn't have to wait long. On Selection Sunday, just a third team announced. Um, I like them as an 8 seed, but I don't like who they have to play once they advance, if they advance, over number nine, Syracuse. That game should be a great game. Iowa State opened at 7.5 point favorites. I think that the Cyclones and the Orange will have a great first round matchup from Source, Connecticut. But when you say Connecticut and women's basketball, that means UConn women's basketball, the greatest women's basketball program of all time, no doubt. So I think Iowa State has a lot of work to do. And just giving the power to UConn. Vegas really likes UConn as in their matchup in the first round against University of Texas San Antonio. They opened as 54.5 point favorites as the number one seed over the 16 seed. So if Iowa State can get through that hard-fought battle against Syracuse, a very tall test against the Huskies awaits.
Following the Selection Sunday post media availability, head coach Bill Fenley says if we can play as hard as TJ's teams play, we've got a shot at beating some people. TJ is TJ Otzelberger from the men's team at Iowa State. I think going in with that mentality is going to get the Cyclones farther than people may expect, but the the matchup against UConn is probably going to be Iowa State's biggest game in recent years. So just looking to see what's going to happen and come out of that matchup.
Yeah, Iowa State was considered a national powerhouse early in the season, starting out on a dominant stretch. And then they failed to like finish out the season on a strong note. I think if they can get back to that status that they were early in the season, I think they could be very competitive with UConn. Joining us this week, we have sports reporter Marshall Woods. Marshall, we brought you in here to go over your March Madness bracket, 1 in a billion odds, but explain to us why you think yours is the one to win it all.
For this year, it's March Madness. So whatever I take probably will be wrong. It will be wrong, and I mean, I'm just hoping that my bracket's good enough to win some of the groups I'm in. But just going over what I have right now, I don't have any 16 seeds beating any one seeds. I don't have any two seeds beating or any 15 seeds beating any two seeds, and I don't even think I have any 14 seeds beating any three seeds. But a big one I have is I have Akron beating Texas Tech. Akron won the MAC. I think they were even favored over undefeated Miami of Ohio, but they came into that tournament they're favored, and I just have this feeling in a matchup versus Texas Tech that the Zips will take down the Red Raiders. If they do go on, I think they'll probably lose to Alabama, but I think that's a sleeper team that I could see coming through and taking down Texas Tech. Another big game I have just in the east side of the bracket. I'll go through what I got right now. So Duke beating Siena. I have TCU taking down number 8 Ohio State. So an upset, but it's an 8-9. So normally in those games, I see the 9 seed being the 8 seed isn't really that big of an upset. I have St. John's taking down Northern Iowa, but I think that game will be really good. I was thinking about taking Northern Iowa. They are one of my favorite mid-major teams. Their defense is incredible. I could be thinking of the wrong team, but I think it's top 20 on KenPom, so they're legit. Uh, Kansas beating California Baptist. I have South Florida at the 11th seed taking down Louisville. South Florida is another mid-major team that I think is really legit. Um, Michigan State taking down North Dakota State. I think that game will be pretty close. I have biased Fargo, so maybe it's my bias coming in, but I think the Bison will put up a good fight. But I think Michigan State will win that. I have UCF taking down UCLA, so the 10 being the 7, and then UConn taking down Furman. I think just going through this east side of the bracket, other notable games I have is Michigan State taking down UConn in the Elite Eight, and then I think Duke will win that region and make their way to the Final Four. For the west side of my bracket, I have Arizona taking down 16 Long Island. I love Long Island. If they win, that would be my favorite 16 seed to ever be the one seed. Fins up, go Sharks. Um, but it's Arizona. I doubt that'll happen. I have Utah State taking down Villanova, so another 9-8. Really like Utah State, love the Aggies. I have Wisconsin beating High Point, Arkansas beating Hawaii. I think that section of games, Wisconsin, High Point, Arkansas, and Hawaii, really any of those teams could win. But I'm just going to go with the two teams that are favored. That one was kind of tricky for me. I have BYU taking down the winner of Texas or NC State. I'm going to say NC State's going to win that first four game, but I think BYU with AJ DeBonsa will take them down. Gonzaga beating Kennesaw State. I have Missouri at the 10 seed beating number 7 Miami. And then I have 2 seed Purdue beating Queens. Notable games in my west side of the bracket. I have 6 seed BYU making it to the Elite Eight. I might have fallen for this BYU trap. I did it last year. I haven't gone to the Final Four. It didn't happen, but I just think BYU is kind of a sleeper team. AJ DeBonsa is incredible, and I think he'll probably end up being the number one pick in the draft this upcoming year. So I had them taking down Gonzaga. I had them taking down Purdue, but I have Arizona making their way to the Final Four in the West. For the South, I have Florida taking down the winner of Prairie View and Lehigh. I'm going to take Lehigh for that game, but Florida's going to dog walk them there. I have number 9 Iowa taking down Clemson. I have Vanderbilt taking down McNeese State. I have Nebraska winning their first ever March Madness game over Troy. If they can't get that to happen, that'll be a conversation to be had. I have North Carolina taking down VCU. I think that's going to be another really, really good just first round game. I have Illinois taking down Penn. I have St. Mary's taking down A&M. I really like St. Mary's. They're probably one of my favorite just teams out west. And then Houston beating Idaho. I didn't take any massive risks in the South other than Florida losing to Vanderbilt in the Sweet 16. I am really high on Vanderbilt. I think they're quite underseeded. I think a 5 seed is a little too low for them. But I have Houston, Vanderbilt in the Elite Eight, and I have Houston winning that game. And then for the Midwest, it's Michigan versus UMBC versus Howard. I think UMBC is going to win that game, but I don't think they're going to take down a 1 seed once more. I think Michigan's going to go through there. I have another 9 beating an 8 seed. I just realized I have only 9 seeds beating 8 seeds, but St. Louis beating Georgia. I really like the Billikens. They are such a fun team to watch. I love the A10, and I think St. Louis will take down Georgia in the SEC. My big upset is Akron beating Texas Tech, as I said earlier. Really like the Zips. Great team in the MAC. And then I have Alabama beating Hofstra, Tennessee beating the winner of Miami, Ohio, or SMU. As much as I love Miami, Ohio, I don't think they'll beat SMU. I think their magic's kind of run out. And then I have Virginia taking the win over Wright State, Santa Clara beating Kentucky, and then Iowa State beating Tennessee State. I really like Santa Clara. I think that the WCC this year is a really good conference. So just seeing them go through would be fun. For the rest of this conference, or the rest of this region, I have Iowa State making their way through to the Elite Eight versus Michigan. But I have Virginia taking down Tennessee. And I think that Iowa State-Virginia game, if it happens, will probably be one of the best games this tournament. I can see it going to an overtime, a double overtime. It'll be a fun matchup. I think Iowa State will win there, but I think they'll lose to the Wolverines. But out of all of my Elite Eight games, Iowa State versus Michigan, I think will be the closest and is the one most up in the air. I could totally see Iowa State making their way to the Final Four. And speaking of my Final Four, so I have Duke in Houston and Arizona versus Michigan, both these games in Indianapolis. I have Duke taking down Houston. Houston, I really, really like ever since the game versus Iowa State. They just are such a good team. Like I said, I think they're really legit. But Duke with Cam Boozer they're just so good. And then Arizona versus Michigan. This game, I think, will kind of be a blowout. I don't know if you would call it a blowout, but I could see Arizona win this game by 10, 15. And then for my national championship, I have Duke beating Arizona in Indianapolis on April 6th. Um, Duke, I just feel it coming. They've been such a great team this year. First seed, I think they'll make it pretty easy all the way through. I think the only time they'll really struggle is versus Arizona and maybe a game versus like Kansas or Michigan State in Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. So that's my bracket for the 2026 Men's March Madness tournament.
Yeah, Marshall, I'm going to correct you on that. I don't think we have your full bracket. I need to see how many points are going to be scored in the national championship. We need full transparency.
I have I don't really have an exact score. I didn't even realize this was the number I had, but I have 167 as my final score. I think it'll be pretty high scoring. Probably like 84, 83, maybe. I don't know. Um, I think it'll be a great game, though. I think it'll be high scoring. I think it'll be fun.
After Marshall went over his bracket, we're going to preview what Iowa State has in the Midwest region of their path to the Final Four. Now, the Midwest region is the bottom right quadrant. Iowa State is the 2 seed, and the only team that is higher seeded than Iowa State is number one Michigan. Um, this region is considered a weaker region compared to the East region that Duke has to get through to get to the Final Four. Um, the odds of Iowa State moving through to the Final Four have increased after this selection show and the seeding. Iowa State against Tennessee State, you have to consider it's a 2 versus 15. You just have to move Iowa State through most of the time. Now, this is March. Cinderella stories happen. Um, but Iowa State, its first real test coming potentially against number three Virginia. That's something that you have to look at. And then I'm gonna fast forward all the way to the Elite Eight. I'm gonna preview a match between Michigan and Iowa State. When you look at what Iowa State does really well is their defense. They force a lot of turnovers. They're one of the best in the nation on KenPom, moving through a defense and forcing the most turnovers. And what is Michigan really bad at? Turning the ball over. They turn the ball over towards the top of the Big Ten in college basketball of just turnovers given up. So I think that's a matchup that a lot of basketball analysts can give to Iowa State is that their defense is going to overwhelm Michigan and just force so many turnovers where it's impossible for Michigan to win the game. Now, Aleigha, what are your thoughts kind of on this whole region of the bracket for the Cyclones?
I mean, honestly, just being in the middle of it, it's just exciting to see where things will go. Something I'm really looking forward to is just kind of seeing how St. Louis comes out of all of this because I don't know, there's something about the Billikens. It's just enticing to the mind, and I'm just kind of excited to see where they'll go. And just another thing, like with the Big 12 conference is just it's just on the rise. Like regardless of who you're gonna play, it's gonna be a good game. And I just think that's gonna be what's gonna make this Midwest region a little more difficult than people are making it out to be from the beginning. And I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of energy coming out of this region as the tournament begins.
Yeah, Aleigha and I will be in St. Louis, covering the Cyclones, in its entirety throughout the tournament run. But some other things that we do have, for the viewer is, we had a sports reporter, Lucas Fulmer, went through all of these teams in this Midwest region and gave you a debrief on their whole season so far, players to watch, everything. So definitely go check that out on the Iowa State Daily website, to see who Iowa State could end up playing. Um, in this region of March Madness. We'll have full coverage from St. Louis, special editions of the Ames Angle, post game content and social media content, all from the Enterprise Center in downtown St. Louis. On this special edition school Zoom call version of the Ames Angle, we're also going to have our threads of the week while we have Marshall here. Marshall, what do you got for us?
This is a personal favorite. It's real small on me. I'm feeling like Ryan Hammer right now, but this is my 2022-23 Washington Wizards. I don't know if the chair will get in the way. Kristaps Porzingis city uniform. KP made me fall in love with basketball in the Knicks. Legend, unicorn. He's my goat. Love the guy and a beautiful uniform.
Well, Marshall, we thank you for your time and All of our sports reporters have filled out brackets for our pool, and we will let you know the winner of the Iowa State Daily Sports Reporter bracket pool. And maybe it's Marshall. Who knows who it is? But until then, that has been Marshall. Thank you. That's all for the men's and women's previews of the NCAA tournaments. We'll see you from St. Louis with more coverage on the Iowa State Daily. And so long, and we'll see you next time on the Ames Angle.
Like, comment, subscribe for more at the Iowa State Daily.
And cut.
Got it.